When addressing how to teach breathing technique with the intention to produce tone on a trumpet, it is helpful to examine what approaches are in common practice. Students are exposed to multiple explanations of how to breathe in their private lessons and while attending master classes. Much of this information is anecdotal and is not backed up by adequate research. Trumpet teachers often emphasize the importance of breath management, but there has been little attention focused on establishing a definitive description of how we breathe in common trumpet methods. Trumpet method books in common use only touch on the subject. Descriptions of respiratory function are usually included at the beginning of method books, and instructors occasionally skip these sections during private lessons, opting to verbally describe respiratory function. If the student does read the breathing sections of their method book, they may be left confused as the information may be vague or contradictory. It is my hope that this unit will aid the trumpet player in developing strong habitual breath management skills. It is important for the student to internalize these concepts and apply them to his or her playing through repetition. The cultivation of these techniques will show marked improvement in the student's tone quality, range, dynamic control, tuning, and endurance. Impressionable young players may experiment with techniques and can develop habits that are less than optimal. These habits may lead to unnecessary muscular manipulation in multiple areas. These habits are often detrimental to airstream direction and can lead to injuries of the lip tissue or cause hernias. A clear description of respiratory function can aid in preventing much of these issues. Much has been discussed about breathing with regard to trumpet playing, all with the same goal: to gain control over how much air gets into the lungs and how it is expelled. Since the lungs are inside the body and the mechanisms to let air into the lungs are based on differences in air pressure, it is difficult to visualize the breathing mechanism. Breathing is a combination of muscular movements that increase the volume inside the torso. You breathe out by increasing the size of the torso, thus decreasing the pressure around the lungs. I may refer to inhaling as inspiration and exhaling as expiration, as these are the terms most commonly used in medical textbooks. The diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle that creates a difference in pressure in the torso when engaged. It is shaped like an upside-down bowl, and like any muscle, it contracts only in one direction. When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens from its bowl shape, decreasing the pressure surrounding the lungs. The decrease in pressure is equalized by the greater pressure outside the body. The change in the shape of the muscle is why the abdomen expands. While relaxing the diaphragm, it returns to its bowl shape and the pressure surrounding the lungs increases. The air is then pushed out. This is, however, not the only mechanism the body possesses to change the pressure surrounding the lungs. There are muscles between the ribs called the intercostals. This word comes from inter, meaning between, and costal, meaning pertaining to the ribs. This makes the word easier to remember. There are two types of intercostal muscles, external and internal. The external intercostals are responsible for elevating the ribs and therefore are used in inspiration. The internal intercostals do the opposite and squeeze the air out. When we expire, other muscles also come into play. The muscles that are responsible for most of the air thrust are in the abdominals. The oblique or side muscles and the rectus abdominals, the rectus being those abdominals in the front of your body, push the air out. These and other muscles work in conjunction with each other to push the air out of your body. One authority on the subject of breathing for brass players is Arnold Jacobs. After a lifetime of study, Jacobs concluded that one only need to know about two things with regard to breathing: song and wind. This concept being that one only need to possess a cursory understanding of respiratory function, more is gained from thinking of the sound or song and the air needed to produce it. I concur with Jacobs that thinking about breathing too much can be counterproductive. Paralysis through analysis. Overthinking about breathing can lead to false muscle manipulations that keep us from achieving our goal of taking a nice big breath and then expelling it in a manner that will produce the desired tone. However, Jacob's conclusions were reached after a lifetime of study on the subject. I have found that setting aside some time in my practice routine specifically dedicated to concentrating on breathing allows me to not have to concentrate on it later. Certain muscles in the neck also play a role in respiratory function, but we are not going to focus on them for now. An in-depth study of respiratory function may be of interest to you, but I have found that one need only focus on these 3 muscle groups. When collecting empirical data on respiratory function as it pertains to brass players, we see that many muscles come into play. This does not mean we must be aware of every action of every muscle that is used when breathing. For example, we don't know exactly how each muscle is working in conjunction with the other when we stand up to open the door, yet we can do it. If we did know how each muscle worked, we could build a robot that could do this and look identical to a human getting off a chair and opening a door. We only need to be aware of the muscle actions that help us achieve our air control goals. Having a grip on the basic concepts of letting air in and allowing it to come out has helped me to gain a certain amount of control over my airstream. For instance, I have noticed that my diaphragm engages a split second before my external intercostals engage. When expiring, the relaxation of my diaphragm, the abdominal muscles contracting, and my internal intercostals all work in sync with each other. Here is an exercise that you can do to synchronizing your breathing. Put a metronome on 60 beats per minute. Be sure to position your jaw and lips in the manner described in the earlier unit in order to direct the airstream forward. Breathe in for 4 beats, then breathe out for 4 beats. When I inhale or inspire, I like to think of the air as not stopping and having a point where I'm both breathing in and out simultaneously, similar to this curve. Once we have breathed in for 4 beats and out for 4 beats, then we want to breathe in for 3, out for 5, in for 2, out for 6, and in for 1 and out for 7. It is important to keep the throat as open as possible when both inhaling and exhaling. This is the point in my routine that I concentrate on the mechanisms mentioned earlier. The goal here is to learn and then forget about these techniques.